Okay, so you've been on this journey. We've spoken about the inclusion pyramid or the exclusion pyramid that starts with the most visible and easy to solve all the way down to the most invisible and most difficult to solve. This is how I see it, right? So at the top, we spoke about political exclusion. Then we spoke about economic exclusion that we're still working on. And then we spoke about in the last episode of social inclusion, which really looks at social cohesion and integration and the removal of bias and value judgments, something we still need to work on, but there's something underneath. The fourth layer of exclusion, which is one that we never talk about. And it is so incredibly important, but it is so deeply invisible. So if you have political exclusion, economic exclusion, social exclusion, the fourth layer is psychological exclusion. The effect on a person and people's psychology of being excluded for generations. The internalized oppression, the psychological trauma of being a marginalized identity. That even though you could include me politically, and you could empower me economically, and you could integrate me socially, does not mean that we've stopped on our inclusion journey, because I may still be psychologically, have built that psychological exclusion, internalize that I am not good enough, which is why thought leaders like Steve Biko in terms of Black consciousness, Frantz Fanon in terms of thinking about the psychosocial effects of racism needs to be addressed and to be spoken about so much more. So for all of us who look at elements like Black Lives Matter and movements like Me Too, and we think that political and economic exclusion or inclusion is now enough, we're wrong. We got to go all the way through that social into the psychological and start talking about the psychological effects of being seen as an other, as Black, as a woman, as gay, as differently abled. This is the stuff we don't want to talk about, that trauma of feeling unsafe in one's own body, of being coded, and that effect. The psychosocial effects of racism, sexism, homophobia are deep and vast, and we haven't even begun to touch the surface of that. So really, when we're thinking about the effects and the need to create inclusion, it's not just about political inclusion and economic inclusion and social, it's also about healing, the psychological inclusion and healing of exclusion that we need to be working on, right? So our journey is going to be long. And in this last video after this, I just want to talk about the effects of some of these elements, just something for us to think about. It's taking this one step further.